I parked my Ford outside the chain-link fence surrounding the old transit station, 15 minutes before the scheduled meeting. The engine ticked as it cooled in the November air. Rain had started, light but persistent, drumming against the windshield and turning the cracked pavement dark. My bank account showed $34 remaining after this month's rent payment. 4 weeks of unsuccessful job hunting had reduced my options to almost nothing. The station entrance sat at the bottom of a concrete stairwell descending from street level. Above it loomed a faded sign reading Riverside Transit Authority, Station 7 closed for renovation. Behind the fence, scaffolding covered parts of the brick building, though no construction workers were visible at this late hour. I checked the dashboard clock. 6:45. The interview was scheduled for 7:00. Grabbed my folder containing 3 copies of my resume and stepped into the rain. The stairwell led down 2 flights to a metal door marked office. The concrete walls were stained with decades of water damage and graffiti. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting unstable shadows. I knocked twice and waited. Heavy footsteps approached from inside. The door opened to reveal a man in his 60s, built solid despite his age, with gray hair cropped military short. "Victor Hayes," he said, voice rough but not unfriendly. "You must be Marcus Webb." I nodded and extended my hand. His grip was firm, calloused. "Come in." The office was cramped. Walls lined with filing cabinets and safety notices. A desk occupied most of the space, its surface covered with blueprints, maintenance logs, and a thermos that smelled like strong coffee. Victor gestured to a folding chair across from him and settled into a worn office chair that creaked under his weight. "Your resume says you worked night security before," Victor said, scanning the single page I had handed him. 2 years at the warehouse district downtown," I replied. "Overnight shifts, mostly monitoring cameras and doing perimeter checks." He nodded slowly, setting the paper down. "This job is different. We are converting the old station into a storage facility for the transit authority. Archives, old equipment, that sort of thing. During the day, we have contractors doing renovation work. At night, someone needs to be here to make sure nobody breaks in or vandalizes the place." He pulled a key ring from his desk drawer and set it between us. "Shift runs from 10 mouse in the evening until 6:1 in the morning. 5 nights per week if you want them, or we can work out fewer nights. Pay is $120 per shift, cash at the end of each week." I calculated quickly. $600 weekly for what sounded like straightforward security work. Enough to cover living expenses and start rebuilding my depleted savings. "What exactly would my duties include?" I asked, trying to keep the desperation from my voice. Victor leaned back in his chair. "Walk the 3 levels every 2 hours. Check doors and gates. Make sure the emergency lighting stays functional. Between rounds you can read, watch videos on your phone, whatever keeps you awake. There is a break room on the main level with a microwave and fridge. Bring your own food." I nodded. "Sounds manageable." "It is," Victor said. "But there are 5 rules you need to follow. Non-negotiable rules. If you cannot follow them, this job is not for you." He pulled a notepad toward him and wrote with deliberate precision. When finished, he tore off the page and slid it across the desk. The handwriting was neat and exact. 1. Never open the door at the end of the lower level hallway. 2. If you hear the sound of a train approaching, go immediately to the break room and stay there until it passes. 3. Do not speak to anyone wearing a blue uniform jacket. 4. If you see wet footprints that appear without explanation, follow them to their source but do not go beyond the main platform area. 5. Avoid the 3rd bathroom stall in the lower level restroom regardless of circumstances. I read through them twice, feeling my eyebrows rise. "These are very specific." Victor's expression remained neutral. "The first rule is safety. That door leads to a section of tunnel we have not finished securing yet. Structural concerns. The second rule," he tapped the paper. "We still get vibrations from active lines nearby. The building shakes. Better to be seated somewhere stable when it happens. Third rule? We had an issue with trespassers wearing stolen transit authority uniforms trying to access the facility. Do not engage with them. Just call me immediately." Fourth rule is about water leaks. We need to track where moisture is coming from so we can fix it properly. And the 5th, he shrugged. That stall has a broken lock and the door swings shut on its own. People have gotten stuck inside. Easier to just avoid it entirely. Each explanation sounded reasonable in isolation. Together they formed a pattern that made my instincts hesitate. But the alternative was another month of rejection emails and watching my savings disappear entirely. "I can follow rules," I said. Victor studied my face for a long moment. "When can you start?" Tonight if you need me to. Tomorrow is better. I will show you the full facility in the morning. 10 Sagirs. Be here at 9:45 so I can walk you through everything before your shift starts. I stood and shook his hand again. Thank you for this opportunity. Victor held my gaze. One more thing. My apartment is in the building next door. Ground floor, windows facing the station entrance. If something happens that you cannot handle, flash your phone light at those windows 5 times. I will come down. But only for genuine emergencies, understand? I understood. The first night passed slowly. Victor had given me a thorough tour that morning, showing me every hallway, stairwell, and storage room across the 3 levels. The facility was larger than it appeared from outside. The main level held the old ticket office, break room, and several storage areas now filled with filing cabinets. The middle level contained the main platform where trains had once stopped, now empty except for construction materials and covered equipment. The lower level descended another flight, a maze of maintenance corridors, utility rooms, and the infamous locked door at the end of a long hallway. The break room had a small television, functioning refrigerator, and a table with 3 chairs. Between my rounds, I ate the sandwich I had brought and alternated between reading news on my phone and watching late-night talk shows on mute. The facility was quiet except for the occasional drip of water and the hum of emergency lighting. My first patrol at 10 took 35 minutes. I noted all secure in the logbook Victor had left for me. The second patrol at midnight was the same. By the third patrol at 2 in the morning, I had settled into the rhythm. Check the stairwells, walk each hallway, test the door locks, confirm the emergency exits remained clear. The work was easy, almost boring. The fourth night started like the others. I arrived at 9:45, changed into the visibility vest Victor had provided, and prepared for my shift. The November rain had continued, leaving puddles in the stairwell leading down to the office. I began my first patrol at 10:15, flashlight in hand, even though the emergency lighting provided adequate visibility. The main level was unchanged. The middle level showed no signs of disturbance. I descended to the lower level with its narrow corridors and exposed pipes running along the ceiling. The locked door at the end of the hallway had always drawn my attention. It was different from the other doors, older, made of heavy wood with metal reinforcement. A padlock secured it, thick and industrial. Victor had been clear about the first rule: never open that door. I had no intention of breaking that rule. I completed my inspection of the lower level and returned upstairs. At 12:20 during my second patrol, I heard it, a low rumble that grew steadily louder, the unmistakable sound of a train approaching. The walls began to vibrate, dust filtering down from the ceiling tiles. I remembered the second rule immediately. Go to the break room and stay there until it passes. I walked quickly to the break room and closed the door behind me. The rumbling grew louder, the floor trembling beneath my feet. For nearly 2 minutes, the sound filled the station, a thunderous roar that made the windows rattle in their frames. Then it faded gradually, the vibration subsiding until only silence remained. I waited an additional minute before opening the door and stepping back into the hallway. Everything appeared normal. I noted the incident in the logbook. Vibrations from nearby active line followed procedure. The rest of the night passed without event. The 7th night brought the first real test. I was conducting my 2 morning patrol, walking through the middle-level platform area. The space was vast, the ceiling high enough that my flashlight barely reached it. Old tile work covered the walls, yellowed with age. My footsteps echoed as I crossed the platform toward the far stairwell. That was when I noticed him. A man stood near the platform edge, back to me, wearing a blue uniform jacket. The jacket was old-fashioned, the kind transit workers had worn decades ago. He stood perfectly still, facing the empty tracks. I stopped walking, remembering the third rule: do not speak to anyone wearing a blue uniform jacket. I altered my route, intending to circle around him at a distance and continue my patrol via the other stairwell. As I moved, he turned. The motion was smooth, but somehow wrong, like watching a film with frames missing. His face looked ordinary at first glance. Middle-aged, unremarkable features. But his eyes were wrong. They reflected the emergency lighting with a flat metallic sheen, like polished coins catching the light. He smiled, and his teeth seemed too white, too uniform. "Excuse me," he called, his voice echoing strangely across the platform. "Do you know when the next train arrives?" I kept walking, eyes fixed on the stairwell ahead. My hand tightened around the flashlight, though I was not sure what good it would do. "Hello," he said again, voice rising slightly. "I asked you a question." I maintained my pace, refusing to respond or make eye contact. The stairwell was 30 feet away. His footsteps followed behind me, the sound of hard-soled shoes on concrete, but the rhythm was wrong, too quick, almost skipping. "Why are you ignoring me?" he asked, the friendly tone slipping. "That is very rude." I quickened my steps, reaching the stairwell and taking the stairs 2 at a time. His footsteps continued behind me, matching my pace exactly. "You cannot ignore me," he called, his voice changing, becoming layered as if multiple people spoke simultaneously. "I know you can hear me." I reached the main level and ran to the break room, slamming the door behind me and twisting the lock. The footsteps stopped outside the door. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then I heard him walking away, the odd rhythm of his steps fading into the distance. I remained in the break room for the rest of that patrol period, only emerging at 3:30 to complete my next scheduled round. The platform was empty, no sign of the man in the blue jacket. I noted the incident in the logbook. Trespasser in blue jacket observed, did not engage, followed protocol. The 8th night introduced a new element. I was walking through the lower level at 1:45 in the morning when I noticed them. Wet footprints appearing on the concrete floor, one after another, as if someone invisible were walking down the hallway. The prints were bare feet, adult-sized, leaving clear impressions in the dust and grime. They appeared in sequence, moving toward me, then past me, heading toward the main platform stairs. The 4th rule echoed in my mind. If you see wet footprints that appear without explanation, follow them to their source but do not go beyond the main platform area. I followed the prints as they ascended the stairs to the middle level. They crossed the platform and stopped at the edge where the tracks began. I stood 15 feet back, watching as water pooled where the final print had appeared. The water gleamed under the emergency lights, perfectly still. No more prints appeared. I waited for 5 minutes, then returned to the office to note the incident. Wet footprints observed, followed to platform edge, source undetermined. As I wrote, my hand trembled slightly. The rules were protecting me from something, but what exactly, I still did not know. The encounters continued over the following weeks. The sound of the approaching train came every 3rd or 4th night, always sending me to the break room. The man in the blue jacket appeared occasionally on the platform, trying different approaches to make me acknowledge him. Once he pretended to be injured, lying on the ground and calling for help. Another time he stood directly in my path, forcing me to walk around him at a distance. I never spoke to him, never met his eyes. The wet footprints appeared irregularly, sometimes leading to the platform edge, other times ending abruptly in the middle of a hallway. I began to notice patterns. The incidents happened most frequently between 1 and 3 in the morning. They never occurred during my time in the break room. The locked door at the end of the lower level hallway sometimes showed signs of being tested, scratch marks around the lock, the handle turned to its limit, but it remained secure. Victor checked in with me at the start of each shift. "Everything going all right?" he would ask. I would nod and say yes. He would look at the logbook, reading my entries about trespassers and footprints and vibrations. His expression never changed. "Good," he would say. "Keep following the rules." On the 15th night, I made my first real mistake. It was 2:30 in the morning. I had just completed a patrol of the main level and was descending to the lower level. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard water running. The sound came from the direction of the restroom, a steady stream hitting tile. A pipe must have burst, I thought, or someone had left a faucet running. I entered the restroom, flashlight sweeping across the space. 3 stalls lined the far wall. The sound of running water came from the 3rd stall. The door was closed. I approached carefully, remembering the 5th rule. Avoid the 3rd bathroom stall in the lower level restroom regardless of circumstances. But water was pouring under the stall door now, spreading across the floor. If a pipe had burst, it needed to be addressed before it caused serious damage. I reached for the stall door and hesitated. Victor had said the door swung shut on its own, that people had gotten stuck inside. That explanation suddenly seemed insufficient. I stepped back and called out, "Hello? Is someone in there?" The water stopped immediately. Completely, instantly, as if someone had shut off a valve. Silence filled the restroom, broken only by my own breathing. I backed toward the exit, keeping my eyes on the 3rd stall. The door remained closed. As I reached the restroom entrance, I heard it. A slow creak as the stall door began to open, swinging outward inch by inch. I did not wait to see what emerged. I left the restroom and returned to the main level, heart pounding. The incident bothered me enough that I called Victor the next morning before leaving the facility. "Something happened," I said when he answered, with the restroom on the lower level. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Tell me." I recounted the running water, my decision to check the third stall, how the water had stopped when I called out. "The door was opening as I left," I admitted. "I did not stay to see what was inside." "Did you open the stall door yourself?" Victor asked, his voice careful. "No, I just got close to it. Close enough that if someone was inside, they would have known I was there." Victor was quiet for a long moment. "That was too close, Marcus. That rule exists for a reason. The third stall is not just a broken door. Something stays in there. Something that wants very badly to be acknowledged." "What kind of something?" I asked. The question I had been avoiding since my first week. Victor sighed. "Can you come to my apartment this afternoon, around 2:00? We need to have a longer conversation." I agreed and ended the call. That afternoon, I climbed the stairs to Victor's ground floor apartment. He answered the door quickly, inviting me into a small living room furnished simply but comfortably. Coffee was already prepared. He handed me a mug and gestured to a chair. "You deserve to know what you are dealing with," Victor began. "I should have told you more from the start, but people do not usually believe until they have seen things for themselves." He settled into the chair across from me. "This station closed in 1967. There was an accident during the final week of operation. A maintenance worker was doing repairs in the lower level. Something went wrong with the electrical system. He was electrocuted, died instantly. They found his body in the third bathroom stall. He had been trying to shut off the water to fix a leak." I set my coffee down carefully. "The man in the blue jacket?" Victor shook his head. "Different entity. This place was built on older ground. Before the station, before the city even. There was something here, a crossing point, some people call it. A place where the barrier between our world and something else gets thin. The station just gave it more structure to work with, more forms to copy." I thought about the wet footprints, the impossible timing of their appearance. And the footprints. "Someone drowned here," Victor said. 1952, before my time. A woman fell onto the tracks during a storm. The station flooded that night. Water on the tracks was deeper than anyone realized. She could not get back up to the platform before hypothermia set in. "What about the door at the end of the lower level hallway?" I asked. Victor's expression darkened. "That door leads to an older tunnel system. Predates the station by at least 50 years. Nobody knows exactly what it was originally used for. Smuggling, some historians think. Maybe part of a mining operation." He met my eyes directly. "What I do know is that 3 people have opened that door since I have been responsible for this facility. None of them came back out. Not right away, at least. 2 of them reappeared weeks later, walking up from the lower level like nothing had happened. But they were not the same." "Not really?" "And the third person?" I asked. Victor shook his head. "Never found him. Just his shoes placed neatly outside the door." We sat in silence while I processed this information. The rules suddenly made complete sense. They were not safety guidelines or liability protection. They were survival instructions. "Why keep the facility operating at all?" I finally asked. "Why not seal it permanently?" Victor gave me a grim smile. "The city owns the property. They want to use it for storage. My job is to manage the facility and keep people safe. The rules work, Marcus. They have kept me safe for 8 years, and they have kept you safe for 2 weeks. As long as you follow them exactly, you can do this job and get your paychecks." I thought about my bank account, my mounting bills, the stack of rejected job applications sitting on my kitchen table. "And if I decide this is not worth the risk?" I asked. Victor shrugged. "I will pay you for 2 weeks whether you worked them or not. For $200 cash. You walk away today and never come back." But he leaned forward slightly. "If you stay, I will increase your pay to $150 per night. That is $750 per week. I will also teach you everything I know about this place. The patterns, the warning signs, how to spot when something is testing the boundaries. Knowledge that might save your life. $150 per night meant $3,000 per month. More money than I had made at any previous job. Enough to not just survive, but actually start building a future again. All I had to do was spend 8 hours each night in a facility where entities from somewhere else waited in the shadows, watching for me to break the rules that kept them at bay. "I will stay," I said, the words feeling inevitable. "But I want to understand everything. No more partial explanations. If something new happens, I need to know what I'm facing. Victor nodded. Fair enough. Let me tell you about the patterns I have observed. He refilled both our coffee mugs and began to speak. The following night, I returned to the facility with new knowledge and renewed wariness. Victor had spent 2 hours detailing the behavior patterns of the various entities. The man in the blue jacket appeared most often on the platform level. He would try various tactics to provoke a response, from friendly questions to apparent distress to outright aggression. The key was never engaging, never speaking, never making direct eye contact. The wet footprints always led to water somehow, sometimes to the platform edge where the old tracks had once held drainage channels, sometimes to the lower level where the maintenance worker had died. The footprints were not malicious themselves, Victor had explained. They were more like a memory, a pattern repeating endlessly. The sound of the approaching train was exactly what it seemed, a train from somewhere else, traveling on tracks that existed in a different version of reality. Being on the platform when it passed was dangerous. The vibrations were only part of it. People had reported seeing things through the windows of the phantom train. Passengers who looked wrong, who pressed their faces against the glass, who beckoned to those watching from the platform. The locked door was the most dangerous element. Whatever was beyond it wanted very badly to be reached. It would use any method to lure someone to open that door. Sounds of people in distress, voices calling for help, even manifestations of people you knew. Never open that door, Victor had repeated. That rule is absolute. The third bathroom stall contained something that fed on acknowledgement. It needed to be seen, to be interacted with, to be confirmed as existing. Approaching it was dangerous. Opening the stall door would be catastrophic. The maintenance worker who had died there had become something else, something hungry for recognition. As long as the stall remained closed and undisturbed, it stayed contained. My first patrol of the night proceeded normally. I walked each level methodically, checking doors and noting the time in my logbook. The facility felt different now that I understood what inhabited it. Every shadow held potential threat. Every unexpected sound demanded immediate attention. At 12:30, I heard the train approaching. I went immediately to the break room as instructed. The rumbling grew louder, the walls shaking. Through the small window in the break room door, I could see down the hallway toward the middle-level stairwell. As the sound peaked, something moved past the window. A blur of motion, too fast to be natural, heading toward the platform. The train sound lasted 3 minutes, longer than previous occasions. When silence finally returned, I waited 5 full minutes before emerging from the break room. I descended to the middle level cautiously, flashlight ready. The platform was empty, but something had changed. The air smelled different, like ozone and damp earth. Standing water covered parts of the platform floor, though there were no pipes overhead that could have leaked. I approached carefully, noting the water's unusual stillness. It did not ripple or disturb despite my footsteps nearby. I completed my inspection and returned upstairs, making note of the standing water in the logbook. At 2:45 during my next patrol, I encountered the man in the blue jacket again. He stood in the main level hallway this time, examining a notice board on the wall as if reading the posted information. I altered my route to give him wide distance. As I passed, he spoke without turning. "You know, I am not really here," he said, his voice conversational. "Not in the way you understand." I kept walking. "Why do you think the rules work?" he continued. "Because you follow them, or because we allow them to work." I reached the stairwell and descended quickly. Behind me, his laughter echoed through the hallway, a sound that seemed to come from multiple sources simultaneously. That was the pattern of the job. Encounters, incidents, moments where the boundary between worlds grew thin and something from the other side tried to cross over. As long as I followed the rules, I remained safe. But the entities were patient. They tested constantly, probing for weaknesses, waiting for the inevitable moment when human error would create an opening. Victor had warned me that the real danger was not the dramatic encounters. It was the slow erosion of vigilance, the gradual accumulation of nights when nothing happened, leading to complacency. The moment you start to relax, he had said, that is when they will strike. The 15th night brought my closest call yet. I was conducting my 2-hour patrol, walking through the lower-level corridors. The lights flickered briefly, a common occurrence Victor had told me not to worry about unless they stayed off for more than a few seconds. As I turned a corner, I saw someone standing outside the 3rd bathroom, facing away from me. A woman wearing street clothes, her long dark hair hanging loose down her back. She stood motionless, head tilted as if listening to something. I stopped walking, instinct screaming that something was wrong. She turned slowly, too slowly, her movement mechanical. When her face came into view, I saw that her eyes were closed, but her mouth moved, forming words I could not hear at this distance. I backed away carefully, keeping my eyes on her but not approaching. She raised one hand and pointed directly at me, though her eyes remained shut. Then she turned back to face the bathroom and walked forward, passing through the closed door as if it were not there at all. For several seconds I stood frozen, processing what I had witnessed. Then I turned and walked quickly back to the main level. My hands shook as I wrote in the logbook. Entity observed outside third stall, lower level. Did not approach. Followed protocol. The rest of that night I stayed on the main level, conducting abbreviated patrols that did not include the lower level at all. Victor reviewed my logbook entry the next evening when I arrived for my shift. "You did exactly right," he said. "What you saw was a lure, an attempt to draw you closer to the stall. If you had approached or tried to help, it would have ended badly." "What would have happened?" I asked. Victor's expression was grim. "The entities here do not kill people directly. They create situations where people make fatal choices, following sounds into the locked tunnel, opening the bathroom stall to rescue someone who is not really there, standing on the platform when the phantom train arrives. The actual danger is not the entities themselves. It is what they can convince you to do." That conversation stayed with me through the following nights. I became more observant, more cautious, more willing to deviate from standard procedure when something felt wrong. On the 19th night, I heard a voice calling my name from the lower level. "Marcus, help me, I'm stuck down here." The voice sounded like my brother James, whom I had not spoken to in months after a falling out over money. "Marcus, please, I cannot get out." I stood at the top of the lower level stairs, listening to my brother's voice echo up from below. Every instinct told me to investigate, to help. But I remembered Victor's warning. The entities could mimic voices, create scenarios designed to provoke a response. I returned to the break room and called Victor's cell phone. "I am hearing my brother's voice from the lower level," I said when he answered, calling for help. "Stay where you are," Victor replied immediately. "Do not go down there. I am coming over." He arrived 10 minutes later, entering the facility with his own key. Together we went to the top of the lower level stairs and listened. Silence. No voice calling for help, no sounds of distress. Victor turned to me. "This is a new tactic. They are using specific information about you now." "Personal information? How would they know about my brother?" I asked. Victor shrugged. "They have ways of reading people, picking up on emotional resonances, fear, guilt, regret. Strong emotions create impressions they can exploit." He met my eyes seriously. "From now on, if you hear anyone calling for help from anywhere in this facility, do not respond. Come get me, call the police, but do not investigate on your own." The encounters continued, escalating slowly. The man in the blue jacket became more aggressive, following me more frequently, trying harder to provoke responses. The wet footprints appeared almost nightly, leading to different locations, sometimes doubling back on themselves in impossible patterns. New phenomena emerged. Shadows that moved independently of their supposed sources. Sounds of machinery from areas where no machinery existed. Brief glimpses of people who vanished when looked at directly. I documented everything meticulously in the logbook, creating a detailed record of each incident. Victor reviewed the entries carefully, looking for patterns and escalations. On the 23rd night, I had my most disturbing encounter yet. I was conducting my midnight patrol, walking through the middle-level platform. The area was empty as usual. Emergency lighting casting long shadows across the tile floor. I had just checked the far stairwell when I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy boots on concrete coming from the direction I had just walked. I turned, expecting to see the man in the blue jacket. Instead, I saw myself. The figure approaching looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, wearing the same visibility vest and carrying an identical flashlight. His face was my face, down to the specific way my hair fell across my forehead. He walked with my stride, his expression neutral and calm. We stood 20 feet apart, staring at each other. The double smiled, and the expression looked wrong on my face, too wide, too knowing. He raised his flashlight and pointed it directly at me, the beam crossing with my own light. "You should leave this place," he said in my voice. "This is not sustainable. Every night you stay, We learn more about you. Your patterns, your weaknesses, your fears. Eventually, you will make a mistake. Everyone does. I said nothing, remembering Victor's advice. Never engage with anything unusual, regardless of what form it takes. The double tilted his head, studying me. I wonder which of us is real, he mused. How do you know you are not the echo, the reflection, and I am the genuine article? He took a step forward. I held my ground, though every instinct screamed to run. We could test it, he suggested. Open the locked door together. Whoever is real will be able to pass through. Whoever is merely a shadow will be pulled back to wherever shadows go. I turned and walked toward the opposite stairwell, my back to the double. Behind me, I heard him laugh. Smart, he called out, but we will meet again. I looked over my shoulder once as I reached the stairs. The platform was empty. No sign of the double, no footprints to mark where he had stood. I completed the rest of that patrol from the main level, avoiding the middle level entirely. Victor arrived early the next morning, entering the facility at 5:30 instead of his usual 6. I need to tell you something, he said, his expression more serious than I had ever seen it. What you encountered last night, the double, that is a significant escalation. It means the entities here are investing serious effort into understanding you. They are modeling you, learning how you think and move and react. Why, I asked. What is the end goal? Victor poured himself coffee from the pot I had prepared. They want you to open the locked door. Everything they do, every encounter, every escalation, it all leads to that. They need someone to open it from this side. They cannot do it themselves. But why me specifically, I pressed. There have been other guards, other workers. Why target me so intensely? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Because you are different from most of the people who work here. You are desperate, yes, but you are also intelligent and observant. You follow the rules precisely, but you also question them, try to understand them. That combination makes you both difficult to manipulate and potentially very valuable if they can find the right approach. He set his mug down. The entities that live here, if you can call it living, they exist partially in our reality and partially in somewhere else. They cannot fully cross over without help. The locked door is a threshold. Opening it would create a bridge between worlds. What would happen if someone opened it, I asked. Victor shook his head slowly. I genuinely do not know. The 3 people who opened it did not come back in any useful state. But I can guess based on what I have seen, more of them would come through. The encounters would not be limited to this facility anymore. The boundary would expand, spreading into the surrounding buildings, maybe further. It would be very bad. I looked at the clock on the wall. My shift was ending in 30 minutes. The gray light of approaching dawn was already visible through the high windows near the ceiling. I need to know something, I said. Am I in real danger here? Can they actually hurt me if I keep following the rules? Victor's answer was carefully measured. The rules provide strong protection, but they are not absolute. Every night you work here, the entities learn more about you. They probe for weaknesses, test different approaches, gather information. Eventually, they might find a scenario you cannot resist. A situation where every choice leads to breaking a rule. The smartest thing you could do is quit. Find another job, even if it pays less. But, he added, if you choose to stay, I will support you completely. I will teach you everything I know. I will be available every night if something goes wrong. The choice is yours. I thought about my slowly recovering bank account, my significantly reduced stress about money, the way I no longer lay awake at night calculating whether I could afford groceries and utilities both. Then I thought about the double wearing my face, the man in the blue jacket with his metallic eyes, the thing in the 3rd bathroom stall that hungered for acknowledgement. I will stay, I said, but I want better emergency protocols, more frequent check-ins, some kind of backup plan if something goes seriously wrong. Victor nodded. Agreed. Let me think about what we can implement. He finished his coffee and stood. Get some rest. I will see you tonight. The work continued, night after night. I learned to recognize the subtle signs that preceded an encounter. The way the air felt heavier, the slight change in temperature, the sense of being watched from just beyond the range of vision. I refined my patrol routes, identifying areas where incidents occurred most frequently, and adjusting my timing to minimize exposure. I developed strategies for dealing with each entity type. Ignoring the man in the blue jacket required consistent effort, never faltering even when he tried new tactics. The wet footprints needed to be followed to their conclusion, as the rules specified, but I learned to do so quickly and efficiently. minimizing time in vulnerable areas. The phantom train's approach now triggered immediate action, no hesitation in moving to the break room. The double appeared twice more over the next week, each time trying different psychological approaches. Once he claimed to be me from the future, warning about dire consequences if I did not leave. Another time he pretended to be confused, asking me to help him understand what was happening. I ignored him each time, treating his presence like any other anomaly to be noted and avoided. The logbook entries grew longer and more detailed. Victor reviewed them each morning, sometimes asking clarifying questions, occasionally sharing insights about similar events he had experienced during his years at the facility. 1 month became 2, then 3. The encounters continued without pause, but I adapted to them. What had initially been terrifying became almost routine. The job was dangerous, certainly, but so were many jobs. Construction workers faced physical hazards daily. Police officers confronted violent situations. I dealt with entities from elsewhere that wanted to cross into our reality. As long as I followed the rules and maintained vigilance, I could survive. The money accumulated steadily. My bank account rebuilt itself. My credit card debt began to shrink. For the first time in over a year, I felt financially secure, but Victor's warning proved accurate. Complacency was the real danger. On the 67th night during my 3-hour patrol, I encountered something new. A child sat on the platform, legs dangling over the edge, crying quietly. The scene looked heartbreakingly real. The child wore a blue jacket like the man I routinely avoided, but in miniature. As I approached cautiously, the child looked up, tears streaming down a face that seemed genuine in its distress. "I am lost," the child said, voice small and frightened. "Can you help me find my parents?" Every paternal instinct I possessed screamed at me to help, but I recognized the pattern now. The blue jacket was the tell. This was another manifestation, another attempt to provoke engagement. I walked past, maintaining distance, keeping my eyes forward. Behind me, the child's crying intensified, becoming desperate, pleading. "Please do not leave me alone," the voice called. "I am scared. Please, I need help." My hands trembled as I climbed the stairs to the main level. I had done the right thing, followed the rules. But the sound of that crying child followed me for the rest of the night, echoing in my thoughts long after the actual sound had faded. Victor reviewed my report the next morning with a grim expression. "They are getting more sophisticated," he observed. "Using children is a new tactic. They are adapting to your resistance." "How much longer can this continue?" I asked. "How long before they find something I cannot ignore?" Victor had no answer. We stood together in the facility's office, morning light streaming through the high windows, surrounded by filing cabinets full of incident reports from decades of supernatural encounters. Some jobs came with straightforward hazards. Mine required navigating a boundary between worlds, maintaining absolute discipline against entities that never stopped learning, never stopped probing for weakness. The rules protected me, but only as long as I remained perfect in following them. One mistake, one moment of compassion or curiosity or simple human error, and the consequences would be severe. I thought about quitting many times during those first 3 months. Each close encounter renewed the temptation to walk away. But financial stability had a pull of its own, and the knowledge I had gained made me feel responsible somehow. If not me, then someone else would take this job. Someone without my experience or training. Someone more likely to open the locked door or engage with the entities or break one of the 5 rules. So, I continued night after night, walking the 3 levels of the old transit station, maintaining the boundary between worlds, collecting my $150 per shift, and wondering how long I could sustain perfect vigilance against threats that never slept and never stopped trying to cross over. The entities were patient. They had all the time in the world. I had only my will, my discipline, and 5 rules that grew heavier with each passing night. Sometimes a paycheck came with costs that could not be measured in money. I was learning exactly how high those costs could climb. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the locked door, something waited with endless patience for the moment when my guard would finally drop.